Today for our read aloud, I want to finish our book, Upstairs Mouse, Downstairs Mole by Wong Herbert Yi. Now, in this book, we've already read the first chapter, and I want to think about the big things that happened in our first chapter, clean and tidy, and I want you to use your fingers to kind of retell the big important things. So you might start with, first, there were two animals. There was a mouse and a mole who were neighbors. Think about what we read and what the problem was. One important thing we might want to talk about is how we know mouse and mole both love to clean their houses, and they kept their spaces nice and clean and tidy, but every morning mole swept his hole and every evening mouse swept her house, and this created a problem. Think in your mind right now what that problem was. The problem was when Mouse swept her house, the dirt fell between the little cracks in her house and it fell below into Mole's house. And it made him really frustrated because he spent all that time cleaning up his home and then he had to do it again. So he went to tell Mouse what the problem was. Think about what the two of them decided together. They decided that they would work together to clean their homes so that they could do it together, and they would start up top so when all of that dust fell down, they didn't have to do it again in Mole's house. So they started in Mouse's house and then went down to Mole's house, and everything was clean and tidy, and it took less time because they were working together. And then they had all of this leftover time, so they decided to create a garden. And when they were done, they worked so hard, but it was only half as hard because they were working as a team. They each were so tired, they went home, and it's kind of funny because they spent all that time cleaning up and they didn't even care that they were making their homes dirty again. So we chatted yesterday about how this really taught us the life lesson that friends work together to solve problems, and it's important to have empathy and think of other people. So now I want to continue reading our next chapter. This one is called The Invitations, and I want to think if we notice the same life lesson of friends being there for each other and having empathy, thinking about other people and not just ourselves. If I do a quick sneak peek on these pages, I notice that Mouse is putting something in the mailbox or getting something out of the mailbox. I'm wondering what it is. And over here I see Mouse, and it looks like Mouse is coming into Mole's home, and they both look very excited to see each other. So I'm wondering if maybe they are planning to go somewhere together or they're having a play date together. If I look on this next page, though, I'm noticing that the characters' emotions look like they're changing a bit. I notice Mouse in this top picture kind of hugging herself and looking maybe cold. And then down here, I see Bump. I'm wondering what happened. So before I even start reading, I want to think about how important it is to think about characters and their feelings and how they change as we're reading. We already noticed some of those changes as we did our sneak peek. I want you to pay close attention as we read this to see how the characters' feelings change and if we notice an important life lesson. The invitations. Mouse found an invitation in her mailbox. It was from her neighbor, Mole. Dear Mouse, if you are not too busy, please come join me for lunch to celebrate our new garden. Your neighbor, downstairs, Mole. Around noon, there came a tap, tap, tap at Mole's door. Glad you could make it, said Mole. Please come in. Mouse had picked dandelions for the occasion. For you, she said, until our flowers come up. Mouse looked around the room. My, but you keep a nice tidy hole, she squeaked. Thank you, said Mole. So we figured out what is going on here. Mouse was receiving the invitation from Mole to join him for a little celebration lunch because they have their new garden. So here is Mouse. Think about how they're feeling right now. Go ahead and out loud where you are, tell me, how are the characters feeling? I'm thinking that they are excited and feeling really happy to be around each other. They're also feeling impressed. I noticed that Mouse is looking around thinking how nice and clean it is. It was a bit damp inside Mole's hole. Mouse shivered. Mole also kept his place rather dark, as bright lights hurt his eyes. Oh, if I use my schema or my background knowledge, I know that moles are kind of blind. They don't really have very good eyesight because they live underground and they're in the dark all the time. So they use their other senses to help them navigate. So it would make sense that he wouldn't want bright lights because that would be too much for a creature that spends most of their time below ground and doesn't see a lot of light. Mouse bumped into the table as she sat down. Bump! Why would she bump into that table? Because it was so dark. She couldn't see where she was going. So on this page, it looks to me like Mouse's emotions might be changing a bit. She was super excited and joyful on the previous page. I saw her with her hands raised. She was coming in, and I noticed the sunlight was still kind of pouring in from that open door. But here on this page, now she's inside. It's chilly and she's shivering. It's dark, so she can't see and she's bumping into things. Oh, I wonder what that must feel like for her. Mole poured a cup of tea for Mouse and one for himself. I wasn't sure how you liked your worms, said Mole, so I prepared them 2 ways. The ones on the right are lightly fried. The ones on the left have not been cooked. Dig in. Mouse took one of each to be polite. Now, it would make sense that Mole, who lives underground, would eat worms. That seems like something that moles would eat. But for Mouse, do you think that seems very appetizing? One clue there is that it says she took one of each to be polite. Not because she wanted it, not because she was excited, but because she wanted to be polite. If she was excited, do you think she would have more than one of each on her plate? I think so. So right now, poor Mouse is cold. It's dark. She's bumped into the table, and now there are worms prepared 2 ways. Mole, if you look at his face, he's still looking pretty excited. Mole filled his plate. He was starved. Mole crunched. Mole slurped. Mouse poked the worms on her plate. The one on the left wiggled and squirmed. Mouse's stomach began to wiggle and squirm. The one on the right looked greenish-gray. Mouse's face turned to greenish-gray. How is Mouse feeling right now? Oh, she's feeling kind of sick, kind of ill, disgusted. She does not want to eat these worms. Mole, he is just having the time of his life here. He's living it up. Poor Mouse. Oh, this is not the meal she imagined. The damp air made her sneeze. Achoo! Goodness, Mouse, said Mole. You do not look well. I don't feel so good, moaned Mouse. Please excuse me, Mole, but I think I'd better go upstairs and lie down. She bumped into the door on her way out. It's so dark she can't even see. So she had to excuse herself because she's not feeling well. After the food that's making her stomach kind of feel a little uneasy and how cold and damp it is, she needs to go back upstairs. I wonder how Mole is feeling right now. I wonder if he's having empathy and he's understanding how his friend is feeling, or if he's just so stuck in his own happiness that he can't even understand why that might be hard for his friend. I wonder. That evening, Mole found an invitation in his mailbox. Dear Mole, I am feeling much better. Please join me for dinner at 6 o'clock to continue our garden celebration. Your neighbor, upstairs, Mouse. At 6 o'clock, there came a tap, tap, tap at Mouse's door. Right on time, said Mouse. Please come in. You are looking much better, said Mole. Thank you, said Mouse. The evening sun poured through the windows in Mouse's house. Mole covered his eyes. He walked smack into a wall. Wait a second, there's plenty of light in there. Why would he walk into the wall? That's right, we know that bright light isn't good for moles. So, it's almost causing him to be blinded now. And he's walking right into the wall. Mole bumped into the table as he sat down. Bump! Mouse poured a cup of tea for Mole and one for herself. Now, on this page, Mole was excited. And it seemed like when they greeted each other at the door, everything was fine. But now that he's walking inside, Things are not like how he has it at home at all. It's very bright. Look at Mole's face. It almost looks like he has a headache. He has his hand on his head. I think that light is way too bright for him. I was not sure which cheese you preferred, said Mouse, so I cut up 2 kinds. The one on the left is cheddar. The one on the right is Limburger. Help yourself. To be polite, Mole took a thin slice of each. Mouse loaded her plate. She was famished. Mouse nibbled. Mouse gnawed. So Mouse is now eating what I would guess is her favorite food, cheese. But Mole, he prefers worms, so he's taking a slice of each cheese again to be polite. He doesn't want to be rude to his host. Mole's head still ached from walking into the wall. He began to wobble in his seat. The bright light over the table hurt his eyes. The strong odor of Limburger made his stomach flip-flop. Ooh, that stinky cheese is making him feel not so well. Plop! Mole toppled right off the chair. Mercy, Mole, squeaked Mouse. Are you okay? Mole groaned. I feel a bit dizzy. Please excuse me, Mouse, but I think I had better go downstairs and rest. He bumped into the door on his way out. Oh my goodness, so it's like the same thing that happened to Mouse is happening all over with Mole, except different food and bright light. These friends seem to need and want different things, and they're having a hard time figuring this out because they're not quite thinking what their friends might want or need yet. Now we're on our next chapter. This is called Kind, Good Neighbors. If I look here, it looks like Mole is getting up from bed. He's yawning and stretching. And then it looks like we're recalling the sneezing. I see achoo and bump from the night before. And it looks like Mole is coming out of the hole. I wonder if he's going to visit Mouse. I wonder if these friends are going to find a solution to these lunch dates that they had and meal dates that they had to try to figure out a way that it can work for both of them. Let's find out. Kind, good neighbors. Mole woke up the next morning feeling refreshed. He looked around his tidy hole. How nicely dark and damp it was. Nothing like Mouse's house, which was warm and bright. Suddenly, Mole pictured Mouse shivering. He remembered Mouse sneezing, Mouse bumping into the table, and Mouse smacking into the door. Why, Mouse had not even touched the worms on her plate. Goodness, cried Mole, how selfish of me. He buttoned his jacket and rushed out the door. What do you think he realized? Why do you think he is saying that he was being selfish? Selfish means when you're only thinking of yourself and not others. It's the opposite of empathy. I'm thinking that Mole is realizing he wasn't considering at all what Mouse might want or need for lunch and how cold she might be or how dark it might feel for her or how gross worms might seem. I wonder where he's going now. I'm thinking he's probably rushing because he wants to go talk to his friend to make it better. Mouse washed the dishes in the sink. Rays of sunshine streamed into the kitchen. How bright and cheery things looked. Not at all like Mole's dark hole. Suddenly, Mouse pictured Mole covering his eyes. She remembered Mole walking into the wall, Mole falling off his chair, and Mole bumping into the door. Why, Mole had not even nibbled the cheese on his plate. Mercy me, squeaked Mouse. What a thoughtless neighbor I've been. She zipped her coat and raced out the door. I'm wondering here if Mouse is having this sudden aha moment just like Mole did. Like, he didn't eat the cheese. He was bumping into things. He fell off his chair. Of course, I was thoughtless. I wasn't thinking of him and what he wanted or needed. And I'm wondering if she's now racing out to try to fix things with Mole. Maybe they both had that aha moment at the same time. Mouse tied a bow on her box and hurried downstairs. Mole finished wrapping his package. He went upstairs to call on Mouse. I don't remember it saying anything about a package. I'm wondering what these packages might be. They bumped into each other outside. Bump! Why, hello, said Mouse to Mole. Hello, said Mole to Mouse. This is for you, said Mole. I hope you don't think me a thoughtless neighbor. Mouse opened the present. There were 2 candles inside the box. Bring them when you visit, said Mole, and my hole will be less dark and damp. Thank you very much, said Mouse. You are a kind neighbor, Mole. So he was thinking Mouse would need to have more light and she would need a little warmth. The candles would do both of that. So he's thinking about what his friend Mouse needs and wants so that he's able to help her with that. Mouse handed Mole her box. I hope I haven't been too selfish a neighbor. Mole unwrapped the package. Inside was a pair of sunglasses. Wear them when you visit, said Mouse, and my house will not seem so bright. Thank you very much, said Mole. You are a good neighbor, Mouse. So Mouse realized, sunglasses will help protect Mole's eyes and help him when he comes to visit me, so he'll be more comfortable. Together, they strolled into town for dessert. Mouse had the cheesecake. As for Mole, a bowl of worms, lightly fried. We have one more chapter, but we're going to wait on that for now. I want to think what happened over these last 2 chapters. I want you to use your hands to retell what happened in the invitation. I'm going to retell a bit. So in this chapter, Mouse had an invitation to join Mole for lunch in his home. So she went down, she was very excited, but once she was inside, she realized it was dark and cold, and there were worms for lunch, and she started to feel not so well. She had to go back upstairs. She decided to invite Mole to her home. Mole came up, he was very excited, but when he got inside, it was so bright, he couldn't see, and he kept smacking into things. When it was time to eat, it was cheese. It started to make Mole feel not so well, and he had to go back downstairs. In our chapter, Kind Good Neighbors, both of our characters realized they hadn't been thinking of their friends' needs or wants. They hadn't thought about what it might be like for their friends to eat the foods that they had or be in their environments. And all of a sudden they realized, I could do more to make my friends feel welcome. I can have more empathy and think about their needs and wants. So Mouse ended up giving Mole some sunglasses to protect his eyes, and Mole gave Mouse some candles to warm Mouse up and provide more light so that they could visit each other but both be comfortable. And they decided to go out for dessert where they could each order what they wanted instead of serving just one thing. So in these few chapters here, I think it continues our theme that we saw in the first chapter as well. And I think one of the main lessons is that friends think of each other and help each other out. Just like in our first chapter, the friends helped each other out by finding a solution to the dirty home problem, and they worked together to solve that problem. These chapters also show empathy and thinking of each other and working together to make a friendship work. So I think we could label this as being friends are always there for each other as an important life lesson, but also it's important to think about other people's needs and wants because all of us might feel differently about different things.